bravest are surely those who have the clearest vision of what is before them, glory and danger alike, and yet, notwithstanding, go out to meet it. It was a hot summer afternoon. Lieutenant Chandan felt uncomfortably hot and stifled under his crisp new military uniform. As his ride drew closer to his ultimate destination, his discomfort grew. He felt uptight and apprehensive. It had been a simple enough decision for him to join the army. After all, it was a family tradition. The initial years of training at the academy were tough but fun. It was all a process of self-discovery, a process of understanding and appreciating one's strengths and weaknesses, and Lieutenant Chandan welcomed it. Today, he stood at a pedestal where he was all set to take up his command and join his regiment. Somewhere deep inside him, he knew that life will never be the same again. The fun and carefree days of the academy were over, and now it was time for responsibility, time for serious challenges, and time for commitment. He hoped that he would measure up to what was expected of him. One of India's most respected and indomitable fighting units, the 18th Cavalry, traces its origins to two very colorful and highly decorated units, namely the 6th Bengal Cavalry and the 7th Haryana Lancers. The 6th Bengal Cavalry was raised at Fatehgarh by Lieutenant Rives in 1842. The regiment saw action in the Anglo-Sikh Wars and the Burmese Wars. The officers of the regiment continued to do well elsewhere too. Brevet Major R.W. Sartorius won the first Victoria Cross of the regiment while on deputation for operations in Gold Coast, Ghana. The regiment also saw action in Egypt when, in 1882, the regiment was sent out as part of reinforcements in England's defense of her rights over the Suez Canal. Subsequently, in 1883, a major recognition came along for this regiment when the Prince of Wales accepted the appointment of honorary colonel for the regiment, and the unit was renamed the 6th Prince of Wales Bengal Cavalry. But more honors were to follow. In 1896, it was given the singular honor to lead the Queen Victoria Diamond Jubilee Commemorative Parade. In January 1906, the regiment got a pleasant surprise in the form of a telegram from King Edward approving the renaming of the regiment as King Edward's Own. I heartily congratulate you on the honor that has been done to the regiment by His Majesty the King, having approved of the designation of your regiment being in future King Edward's Own, with permission to wear on your appointments His Majesty's Royal and Imperial Cipher in addition to the Prince of Wales plumes. The 7th Haryana Lancers were raised under Captain J. Liptrot in Kanpur in 1846. The regiment saw action in Afghanistan and also played an important role in the Third Burma War. And as the various divisions of the Indian Army were coming of age, battle clouds were gathering on the global arena. The world was getting ready to go to war, a war of a scale and magnitude that was never seen before. A war the world was to remember for generations to come as the First World War. It was time for the brave soldiers of the 6th Bengal Cavalry and the 7th Haryana Lancers to set sail to help England in her war efforts. While the 6th Bengal Cavalry joined the 2nd Cavalry Brigade in France, the 7th Haryana Lancers took position at Basra in Middle East Asia. While numerous tales of valor and courage mark the 6th Bengal Cavalry and 7th Haryana Lancers Middle East campaign, the one that truly stands out is the action that the 6th Bengal Cavalry saw at El Afule. At El Afule, the 6th Bengal Cavalry was a part of the main assault on the Turkish flank towards the coast. The British plan was to turn inland and establish itself on the Turkish line of communication at Haifa, El Afule and Bisan, thus cutting off both Turkish armies which were holding the defenses on the west of the Jordan River. The regiment was ordered to capture the railway yard and the aerodrome at El Afule. In a valiant cavalry charge against the superior Turkish forces, it captured several rolling stock and a goods train and several aircrafts on the ground. Many Turkish lorries were seized by the 6th Force. A bag of Turkish silver, Mecidiye, was also captured from a vehicle near the aerodrome. After the war, the coins were melted and made into a statuette of a 6th Cavalry soldier in full marching order. This silver trophy showing Dafedar Nand Singh, who was subsequently decorated with the Indian Distinguished Service Medal for leading this valiant charge, is now proudly displayed in the Regimental Officers' Mess. For its bravery and valor in the Great War, both the regiments were awarded with 2 Victoria Cross, won by Major Messi Wheeler and Captain A.M. Reed, 5 Distinguished Service Order, 7 Military Cross, 9 Order of British India, 10 Indian Order of Merit, 38 Indian Distinguished Service Medal, and 32 mention in dispatches. The Great War ended on June 28, 1919, with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, and it was time for the battle-weary troops to return home. In 1921, a plan was tabled for the amalgamation of the Indian cavalry regiments, and as per this plan, both the 6th Bengal Cavalry and the 7th Haryana Lancers were amalgamated and subsequently rechristened the 18th King Edward's Own Cavalry on 1st August 1922. Post the reorganization, the amalgamated regiment was to comprise of 1 squadron of Jats, 1 squadron of Khem Khanis and 1 squadron Rajputs. By now, Lieutenant Chandan was truly overwhelmed. The regiment's rich history, its long glorious tradition, the stories of the hundreds of brave soldiers who had won accolades all over the world made him a tad nervous. As he moved down the hallowed portals of his regiment, photographs of officers who were responsible for many a battle won, many a glory earned, stared down at him, almost challenging him to be a part of their glorious heritage. In 1922, the newly formed 18th Cavalry settled down to peacetime routine, which was primarily devoted to games and training. The regiment has the proud distinction of winning the Armored Corps Tent Pegging Trophy a record 6 times, the highest in the entire Corps. As a commemoration, this trophy is now a regimental memento which is presented to all the officers, guests and sister units. In October 1939, the regiment received 79 15 CWT Fordson trucks, its first fighting vehicles, in addition to the horses. In September 1939, the world went to war for a second time. A war which saw the deployment of 100 million military personnel. A war which history remembers as the Second World War. During this great war, the regiment saw action in Tobruk. It was here that the regiment earned its battle spurs. Tobruk was the 18th moment in history when it faced up to its destiny and made the country proud. The famous Siege of Tobruk began on 10th April 1941 when an Italian-German force under Lieutenant General Erwin Rommel, also known as the Desert Fox, attacked the Allied forces in the African desert. The siege continued for 240 long days. Maintaining control of Tobruk was crucial to the Allied war effort, since other than Benghazi, Tobruk was home to the only other major port on the African coast between Tripoli and Alexandria. Its defense by Australian, British and Allied troops from April 10th to December 7th was fatal to Rommel's hopes of triumph in Egypt that year. The 18th Cavalry was placed under command of the 9th Australian Division as its divisional cavalry for the defense of Tobruk.
We lost our horses, all horses were shot dead. We left Rawalpindi on 18 January 1941 for Bombay, and we reached there on 22nd January. Then a ship, El Medina, that we embarked that on first week of February. Then 6th February 1941, we sailed for Suez Canal.
the regiment was allotted a 5-kilometer portion of the western perimeter of Fortress Tobruk to hold on till 19th April, and it remained responsible for its defense unrelieved till its evacuation from Tobruk on 27th-28th August. It was during this historic siege that the regiment got another distinction, that of a senior and retired naval officer fighting along with the regiment. Admiral Sir Walter Cowan was 70 years old. He hated the idea of sitting out of the war. He tried to rejoin the Royal Navy but was not able to do so for obvious reasons. However, he got himself attached to the regiment by reaching the Tobruk coast on board one of the supply ships. The admiral remained attached and took part in every action of the regiment during the siege.
We were commanded by Admiral Cowan. He was about 70 or hardly 5 feet. Medals बहुत लगे हुए थे उसके. He entered us. Then he was with us. The commandos went on action for a few days, 4 or 5 days, and Sir Walter Cowan, Admiral, he was so much interested in cavalry, he did refuse, I won't go with his squad. He remained with us. He had a pistol, he went with the vehicle and fired the enemy with a pistol. Then all cartridges were off. Then he didn't throw the pistol. The German forces asked him to come down, but he didn't come. Then with the other British officers and Indian officers, they were prisoner of war, and he was made a prisoner of war there.
This bravery of the 18th Cavalry in the face of one of Germany's most feared generals is spoken about even today in hushed tones amongst war veterans and historians alike. In keeping with its association with the famous Siege of Tobruk, the 18th is a proud member of the Rota, or Rats of the Tobruk Association. War possibly brings out the best in a man, and the Second World War saw those fine men of the 18th win several major battle honors. For its bravery and valor in the Great War, the regiment was awarded with 1 Distinguished Service Order, 1 Member of British Empire, 6 Military Cross, 2 Indian Order of Merit, 7 Indian Distinguished Service Medal, and 7 Mention in Dispatches. The commander of the regiment, Lieutenant Colonel H.O.W. Fowler, was decorated with the Distinguished Service Order, and in true 18th tradition, this war hero dedicated this honor to his regiment with the following words: "I have always felt that all the ranks of the regiment deserved it far more than I did. They really won the DSO, not I." At the end of the war, it was back again to India for the regiment. On return, the regiment received a welcome message from Field Marshal Sir Archibald Wavell, Commander-in-Chief, India. "I am glad to welcome you back to India after an absence of 2 years, during which period you have enhanced the reputation both of your own regiment and the Indian Army." The regiment also hosted Admiral Sir Walter Cowan in early 1947 at Risalpur and installed him as the Honorary Colonel, the only regiment in the history of the Indian Army to do so. The Admiral returned the favor by receiving his bar to DSO for the services rendered in World War II by wearing the uniform of Honorary Colonel of the regiment. The year 1944 was a landmark year for the 18th, when the legendary then Lieutenant Colonel Hiralal Atal became the first Indian commandant of the regiment. He went on to become a Major General and was the first Indian Adjutant General of the Indian Union. He was entrusted with the task of designing the Indian equivalent of the Victoria Cross by Pandit Nehru and was responsible for creating the country's premier gallantry award, the Param Veer Chakra. On August 15, 1947, at the stroke of the midnight hour, a new India was born. The Khaimkhani squadron of the regiment was given an option to migrate to the newly formed Pakistan or continue in India. They, along with one of the officers, Shahabzyada Yaqub Khan opted to move to Pakistan. Yaqub Khan later went on to become the Foreign Minister of Pakistan under General Zia-ul-Haq. Yaqub Khan later on visited India during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations of RIMC, where he was presented with the Regimental History book. As a new India was born, it was a proud moment for Major General K.C. Khanna to be leading the regiment. Major General Khanna is largely remembered for having regrouped the regiment in the aftermath of the country's partition. As a result of the reorganization of the Indian Army necessitated by the Muslim troops going over to Pakistan, the 18th finally reorganized to a class composition of Jats, Hindustani Mohammedans and Rajputs. After General Khanna, the regiment was commanded by some of the finest officers of their generation. Thereafter, the command passed on to Lieutenant Colonel G.R. Saran, followed by Lieutenant Colonel Balwant Singh, and then Major General R.L. Chopra.
It's a low-profile regiment, not one of these flashy people. Low profile, but absolutely solid. 18th, out of all the armored regiments, was respected as a solid, no-nonsense regiment, and given any job which the 18th had to be done, the senior most people who gave the job rest assured that it will be done properly. A lot of commanding officers just try to hide up things, and they hide up things for which they are not responsible.
The regiment also saw a steady improvement in its firepower with the induction of the light Stuart tanks in 1943, followed by the Shermans in 1946. General Chopra handed over the command to Lieutenant Colonel Abbas Mehdi, who was succeeded by Brigadier R.P.S. Randhawa and Brigadier Hari Singh. 1965. It was during the command of Brigadier Hari Singh that in 1965, the brave men of the 18th were called upon to once again stand up for the honor of their country and their regiment as Pakistan launched an offensive against India. On the night of August 15th, the regiment was ordered to move for concentration in the Sialkot sector. It was the 8th of September. The Alpha Squadron of the 18th Cavalry had reached Aik Nadi. They had instructions to advance towards Sialkot and secure the Ura bridge over the Aik Nadi. Having secured the bridge, the squadron advanced towards Sialkot. An enemy air observation post began to direct medium artillery fire on the squadron, which was in some difficulty because their tanks could not get off the road owing to the flooded paddy fields. Captain Ravinder Singh's tank and two other tanks got bogged down in the flooded fields. The officer dismounted to supervise the recovery of the tanks. It was then that this gallant soldier was hit by shrapnel and died on the spot. Seeing the officer fall, Savar Raghubir Singh from his tank crew went to his help and was seriously wounded.
This boy, whatever you want to say, he was always in the lead, and just a fearless chap. Jokingly he told my wife when we left Kaluchak area that, ma'am, don't worry about squadron commander, that's me. I'll look after him and I'll write you a letter from Islamia College, Women's College, Islamia, and from Sialkot. So he was full of beans, a good armored corps officer we lost there.
The death of Captain Ravinder Singh was a serious loss to the regiment. For its bravery and valor in 1965, the regiment was awarded with 1 Veer Chakra for Naib Risaldar Muhammad Ayub Khan, 2 Sena Medal, and 4 Mention in Dispatches. The regiment was awarded with the Battle Honour of Tilakpur, Mohadipur, and the Theatre Honour of Jammu and Kashmir. After leading the regiment successfully in the 65 operations, Brigadier Hari Singh handed over the command to Major General G.S. Sandhu, who is regarded as the historian of the Armoured Corps. It was during his command that the old Shermans were phased out and replaced by T-54s. After General Sandhu handed over the baton to Lieutenant Colonel J.D.S. Khera, who was succeeded by Lieutenant Colonel Jasbir Singh, popularly known as Raja Sahib. It was during the command of Colonel H.S. Mann that in 1971, the battle clouds gathered once again over the land and India was once again at war with Pakistan. In September of 1971, the 18th was called upon to reach the critical Fazilka sector, where it remained throughout the war and distinguished itself. Their role was to defend the Fazilka-Suleiman K axis. For its bravery and valor in 1971, the regiment was awarded with 1 Veer Chakra
for Naib Rasaldar Noor Muhammad Khan
and 4 mention in dispatches. The regiment was awarded with the Theatre Honour of Punjab. With the award of this theatre honour, the regiment achieved the proud distinction of having the second highest number of battle and theatre honours in the entire Armoured Corps, with a grand total of 29. After the 1971 operations, Colonel H.S. Mann passed on the baton to Colonel S.P.S. Sirohi, who was succeeded by Major General H.S. Batra. Colonel Shamsher Singh succeeded Major General Batra. One of the proudest moments of the 18th's long and distinguished history came under the command of Colonel Shamsher Singh in the form of the colour presentation. It was on March 26, 1980. The then President of India, the late Shri Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy, presented the colours to the regiment. The colours were received by the standard bearer, Captain, now Major General R.K. Yadav.
It was very exciting and an honor to receive the colours from the President of India. As a young officer, I felt very proud to be the centre of attraction of a parade. It is a high which I'll always remember throughout my life.
After Colonel Shamsher Singh, the command of the regiment passed on to Lieutenant Colonel J.N. Valikappan. In 1983, when the Lieutenant General J.S. Verma was commanding the regiment, the firepower of the regiment improved significantly with the introduction of the Soviet-made T-72s, which replaced the old warhorse T-54. It was during his successor, Colonel I.S. Shergill's command in 1986 that the regiment got the honour of driving down the Rajpath during the Republic Day parade. Major F.A.M. Machado was the squadron commander. The regiment's command passed to Major General V. Shankar, who was succeeded by Lieutenant General Dilip N. Desai. In 1991, under the command of Colonel K.S. Rathore, the regiment celebrated its 150th sesquicentennial at Patiala. This occasion also saw a commemorative stamp being released in honour of the regiment and the release of the regimental history book, I Serve, written by Major General G.S. Sandhu. The command then changed over to Major General R.K. Yadav. The regimental command subsequently passed on to Colonel F.A.M. Machado, who was succeeded by Colonel N.J. Singh, who in turn handed over the command to Colonel Jaideep Singh. It was under the command of Brigadier Jagatbir Singh that in 2004, the regiment was converted to TISAS, which gave it significant advantage in night fighting. The command then changed over to Colonel Sandeep Singh, who was followed by Colonel Shiraz Verma, who in turn handed over the reins of the regiment to Colonel Vikram Verma. It was during this time that Major General R.K. Yadav took over as the colonel of the regiment.
We have a very quiet and efficient manner of functioning, wherein the regiment has been performing very well in all aspects, like exercises, field firings, war games, and sports, including your station matters. The regiment must continue improving on these, as this is our strength, and I look forward to it doing much better in the future.
Lieutenant Chandan, though in awe of all he had heard and seen, felt proud to belong, to be a part of one of the finest battle units of the Indian Army. They say, the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And the men at the 18th are ever prepared, ever watchful, training under their able commanders, ready to do duty for their country and their regiment.
Chandan, I'd like to welcome you to one of the finest regiments of the Indian Army.
We sleep safely in our beds because rough men stand ready in the night to visit violence on those who would harm us. The men of our great army are those this country trusts to lead and defend, to protect and care during war and in peace. Steeped in history, enriched by tradition, the men at the 18th have always served with valor and marched with dignity.